now like to call on John, our good friend John Denton, who is a great supporter of our work on the continent and a good advocate for Africa in the international market and the African private sector. But so, John, if I can call on you now just to let us understand some of the actions that you're taking and some of your views on the issues that we're discussing today.
Oh, look, Hubert, thank you very much. Actually, it's a great honour to be participating in this discussion. One of the challenges we find at the moment is that at a peak level, there is still an absence of real-time knowledge, of real-time situations in real countries, with real businesses, with real people. As much as you all are engaged in the African battle against COVID, so the extraordinarily important battle to save lives, and at a peak level, there's still a lot of distraction about this. And one of the roles I see of the International Chamber of Commerce, and just to be clear, we're 100 years old. We are the institutional voice of 45 million businesses globally. What I'm finding more and more is that we're being asked, particularly in this crisis, to bring the views of the real economy into these policy discussions at a global level, which is really, on one level, pleasing for us as an institution, but disappointing that what we're still seeing is a lot of the playbook from the global financial crisis being deployed in response to fundamentally major disruption, not just from a health and societal point of view, but to the real economy. And the consequence of that is that if you want to preserve and stop the carnage in the real economy, you really have to focus as well on how you keep SMEs, micro SMEs, independent entrepreneurs, and frankly, the formal economy functioning, and not enough attention is being paid to that. So in that context, we have launched a global campaign which is Save Our SMEs. A particular focus is on a series of principles that attach that, but of course the principles are global. The reality is regional and country by country, so we are very particular. You should be aware that there are, and you are aware, I'm sure, that there are particular short-term critical policy decisions that will need to be made and opportunity. And the one in particular we're focused on at the moment, which I think has got relevance, particularly when I heard the first speaker speak, and some of Hubert's introductory comments, is on the spring meeting of the IMF, World Bank, and the gathering that will occur alongside that of finance ministers. We think that's particularly important because we are very concerned, as a number of you would be, and I think as Hubert has also acknowledged along the way, that in order to stimulate and provide opportunity for fiscal stimulus, particularly in emerging economies, there are inhibitions in the way of international financial institutions and others, and actually talking about the Paris Club along the way. But the idea somehow, in this point of view, appointed to this time, that sovereign governments should be asked to choose between paying nurses and paying their debt interest is just ridiculous. So we will be calling, and we're mobilising in a spring meeting, a significant call to action to suspend debt payments to enable the IFIs and others to actually focus on doing what they should be doing, which is finding the headroom to support your economies. That's the first step. The second step we're focusing on at the spring meeting is the reality that unless we focus on the speed that is required, been touched on a little bit in the discussion, the reality of money into the SMEs and the micro SME sector, then we'll be talking about this for a long time. And I think we all know that even on the most recent numbers coming out of a crisis like Hurricane Katrina, 50% of SMEs never reopened. And when you look at the scale of the disruption and the tragedy of COVID-19, that number will fail unless we keep those elements open. And so additional methods being used, the way in which the number of the major institutions are still how they intervene in local markets and support sovereign states, particularly those who don't have headroom to actually bring out their own stimulus packages, is quite disturbing. The idea that this can all be intermediated through banks is also not going to play. The reality, we're already seeing this in developed markets, that banks are not speedily intermediating. They're actually using a lot of the funds to actually buttress their own balance sheets. They're also actually requiring similar covenants, etc. So we are suggesting alternate mechanisms, particularly a region like Africa, and I can be more particular, that you could be even more vague. There are alternate mechanisms to actually provide speedy access to funds to SMEs and micro, and we'll be arguing for that with particular examples, using mobile money, digital wallets, telcos using credit card facilities, etc. And so we will be particularizing that from each jurisdiction. But we do think that's an important call that needs to be made, and it may not be your observation at this point in time, but it's certainly the observation that's emerging. I'm going straight from this call into a discussion with our Latin American group of national committees and chambers, and this is a particular issue in Latin America, by the way, about the lack of speed and lack of accessibility. And I was told this morning by our developed country participants that this is not reserved for emerging markets. This is what's happening in the UK. Less than 1% of applicants for access to this purportedly speedy stimulus package for SMEs have actually already been approved. And most of us know there's only about a 27-day window for SMEs and micro SMEs. So they're quite practical issues that we're focusing on at the moment. And I do draw your attention to that. We also do want to engage much more in discussions with the African Development Bank and others. So in fact, I've been able to participate in this discussion at this point in time. I think from our perspective, very valuable, and we're very respectful to engage with you. We are advocacy, and we are particularly what you need. And on the ground, we are developing tools now to actually support SMEs and micro SMEs in country, be it putting together a business continuity plan, which, as you know, most SMEs and micro SMEs don't have. We've actually developed one, deployed one, and made that available to the chambers of commerce in your country and the national committees as well for them to use. We've actually upgraded our position on force majeure to actually enable that to happen. We've also flexed our access to trade finance, all these sorts of issues. And we are using this as a huge push to move the world from analog in trading and financing to digital. So all these things are designed to actually facilitate speedy interventions and support for the real economy. And I was asked to meet with the new manager of IMF on Monday. First, all these points, they're very eager for our engagement next week because they know they need support. Also with the president of the Inter-American Development Bank, similarly, and with the World Bank. So that's what we're trying to do. Simultaneously, we've been convening, we were the first group to call for a virtual meeting of the G20. We've actually gave direction as to what should happen in terms of what sort of global cooperation should be found. What we came out with was good, but not great, to be frank. We actually turned our attention and we worked with trade ministers, going back to your the African Continental Free Trade Agreement. You know, more work needs to be done on that, even just enabling supply chains to operate for medical goods and services. We actually provided a 10-point plan for the trade ministers, which has been adopted. I'm invited to participate in the next G20 trade minister meeting, and I'll be saying points about opening supply chains, about doubling down on support for SMEs trading opportunities. So I might just leave it at that there. I just want to, I suppose, a bit of a pen picture of what we see as key priorities at the moment in terms of advocacy around debt and around speed of access to funds and actually thinking differently. Part of what I think Nigeria was saying is a paradigm shift needs to occur in the way these issues are. And secondly, the issues. And if you have a chance, I do invite you to look at our SME camp. It's actually being deployed on a global basis. We have a lot of support from African chambers of commerce and from national committees as well. And there's obviously an opportunity for sovereign wealth funds and others to be supportive of the principles contained therein. So thank you very much.
Doing business in Africa. You can't afford to be without Africa Investor.